Howdy there, folks. Welcome on back to Professor O's David Lynch 1001. Now in today's lesson, we'll be covering the infamous Dune 1984. This is sort of a stain on the career of David Lynch. It is one of his least critically acclaimed works. It is one that your dear professor doesn't even enjoy that much, but it is a film we must cover nonetheless. I will keep this brief because, as it says on the slide, this is basically a free period. You do not have to engage with this film or its history if you do not choose. It is kind of a sad story. It reflects a compromised vision from Lynch. But I should say, if you enjoy this film, if you enjoy the story, more power to you. While I may not find such joy, I am very proud of any student that is able to seek some sort of happiness through a story which I cannot. There's a sort of campiness, there's a sort of fun to it, but in the end, I feel a lot of sadness from this sort of work. If you want to engage with this film, but not quite watch it, there is this excellent David Lynch Dune documentary by the YouTube channel Forgotten Real. It's a video simply titled David Lynch and Dune. It's linked down in the description. It's criminally underseen and provides a really beautiful oversight into this film and how it became a worser version of what it could have been. But I digress, because we must start with Dune, the 1964 sci-fi novel. Frank Herbert published a novel that was not immediately a hit with the general public, but grew and grew to be a cult classic, and then one of the most best-selling sci-fi novels, and especially the best sci-fi novel of its time, at least in terms of sales. It would go around for a while, needing a sort of adaptation, and it would ultimately get some in the form of course, David Lynch's version, a sci-fi miniseries, and then a sequel miniseries, and then a series of films by Denis Villeneuve, which have come out in 2021 and 2024 respectively, with a part 3 in the works. Well, not just in the works, but coming out this Christmas, as it will be adapting the second book in the Dune saga, Dune Messiah. That is a film that David Lynch would have adapted and even started writing the script for had not Dune 1984 been a complete flop. Nonetheless, there were people thinking before any of these films or limited series coming to light, Dune was completely unadaptable. It was full of monologue, internal thought structures, all the stuff that would make it really hard to put to a screen. But people tried nonetheless, and with the first big attempt, we had Alejandro Jodorowsky, a Chilean filmmaker with a backlog of very surreal works. He was approached with the idea of making this film with a multi-million-dollar budget, lots of wild additions. There's a whole documentary about what his film would have looked like. I've never personally seen it. I'm not really interested in the work of Alejandro Jodorowsky anymore. He's been kind of outed as a very grimy figure when you dig into some of what he has said and done over the years. What needs to be underlined is that this film tried to be made, didn't end up being made for a number of reasons, a ballooning budget being one of them, some odd artistic choices, including a idea to have thousands of extras defecating in one scene. Too many things for me to really sum up in just this one slide. If you would like to check it out, go on ahead. But after all, this is not Alejandro Jodorowsky 1001, this is David Lynch 1001. And one thing we must cover in this sequence of events is the work of H.R. Giger, a Swiss artist whose work you can see here on the right, depicting what would have been one of the House Harkonnen's modules or vehicles or what have you, But when this version of the film fell through, we would get to a prospective version by Ridley Scott, also featuring the work of H.R. Geiger. We can see one of his ideas for a sandworm here on the left, along with him sitting in a prop that he had designed for one of the House Harkonnen seats. Now, with Ridley Scott, acclaimed director from such sci-fi classics of Alien and Blade Runner, he never ended up making this adaptation because, one, he never wanted to go to Mexico. It was too hot and hellish for his liking. He didn't want to explore those deserts as a vehicle for the setting, but two, his version was differing from the text in quite a lot of ways, to say the very least. There was ideas for an incestuous relationship between the main character Paul and his mother, various things that disagreed with Frank Herbert's vision and what he would have signed off on. So ultimately, this version of the project also fell through, which is when we move on to Dino De Laurentiis' Entertainment Group and his purchasing of the rights, which he would option for several years until his daughter, Rafaela De Laurentiis, sitting to the right of him in this photograph, she would go to Dino saying, there's this filmmaker named David Lynch. He's very capable of making so many vastly different worlds. Maybe he could make Dune come to life. And Dino trusted her, ended up talking with Dune. He ended up quite liking David, even though there were certain eccentricities to both of them that are underlined through so many different stories. In fact, when Dino first called up David Lynch in 1981, Lynch misheard Dune as June because of Dino's thick Italian accent. But various stories, such as the one about Johnny Blue Eyes, pop up in things like Room to Dream. If you want to dig into them, please do. Quite an interesting figure Dino De Laurentiis was. He was a prolific movie producer throughout the years. One of such works was Flash Gordon, which actually had some work done by Frank Herbert. That is a side tangent I find interesting, but how about we move on to, again, the main course. David Lynch's Dune would feature such actors as Francesca Annis, Kyle MacLachlan, and Alicia Witt. Francesca Annis is not necessarily relevant to the canon of David Lynch. However, she's a renowned actress in her own right, appearing in many other popular films of the time, such as, Macbeth by Roman Polanski. I've never seen that one. I've never really seen anything she's been in. What I have seen are all the works that Kyle MacLachlan has been a part of with Lynch, be they Twin Peaks, be they Blue Velvet. But it would all start here with Kyle MacLachlan's first ever film performance, where he would play the main character, Paul Atreides. He would portray a role that he had been studying for years, as he had read Dune yearly since his early adolescence, though he would give a performance he would ultimately not be proud of in his older age. He did strike up a very, very lovely acquaintance with Lynch that would last their entire lives. Here they are, as in Annis and MacLachlan, next to Herbert, and some photos they were taking as Dune was in production. But another notable casting choice was that of a child prodigy named Alicia Witt. Here she is at 7 years old in the role of Alia, and here she is a couple years later as Kirsten Hayward. I always mix that up. Kirsten Hayward is a part of the Hayward family in Twin Peaks. She would play piano in this scene, showing off some more of her child prodigy qualities. But this goes to show the working relationship developing after the film that is Dune. And speaking of developing working relationships, we've got Jack Nance as a supporting character with the Harkonnens as Nefud, playing a sort of accordion-like strange device. I can't really explain it, even having read the novel. But I should move on to Brad Dourif, who would go on to join the two actors to his left and right in Blue Velvet, the Lynch film that would follow Dune. We cannot forget Dean Stockwell, as he would go on to have one of the best performances of Blue Velvet. With Brad Dourif and Dean Stockwell, they would play Peter DeVries and Dr. Wellington Yue, respectively. I hope you can make out I've started naming these specific actors or whoever I put on the page just so you can take better notes, class. I know, how could I forget even doing this in the first place? Maybe I don't even deserve a higher budget than what I've got. Am I right? Am I right? Am I right? Okay. We've got other casts that are very important to note. We've got Everett McGill, who would go on to not only be in Twin Peaks, but a small role in The Straight Story, David Lynch's 1999 film. Here he plays Stilgar. Then we have Jose Ferrer, who's a Puerto Rican actor, playing the Emperor Padishah. Now he has a son named Miguel Ferrer, who would play Albert, also on Twin Peaks. Besides that, we've got non-David Lynch canon actors again, but still legendary casting decisions. That is, of course, Sting of the Police fame as Fade Rotha, and Sir Patrick Stewart cast as Gurney Halleck. Very interesting casting decisions because, one, Sting is not very well known for his acting. He had only done like 1 or 2 films before Dune, and Sir Patrick Stewart is seasoned within the sci-fi genre before this, of course, with his association with Star Trek The Next Generation. As you may all know, if you are fans of the genre itself, I had encountered some of those when I went to see a screening of Dune 1984 in the theater back 2 years ago when it had its 40th year anniversary. It's very popular with that sort of crowd, even if it's not the best films. We've got some legends of the filmic world working on Dune 1984, so how could it fail? We've got Anthony Masters, who would do production design on 2001: A Space Odyssey, lauded as one of the best sci-fi films of all time, especially in its production. Looks beautiful, looks so futuristic, and that is thanks to Anthony Masters in many a way. He would also be an art director on a film called Lawrence of Arabia, adapting the story of T.E. Lawrence. The story of T.E. Lawrence, of course, would be a massive influence on Dune by Frank Herbert. That story of a man leading a sort of jihad with the citizens of Saudi Arabia against the Ottoman Empire has been told and retold so many times. Lawrence of Arabia was one of those times. Another important member to the Dune production was Carlo Rambaldi. Carlo Rambaldi is sitting next to his most famous creation, that of E.T., who would also work on Close Encounters of the Third Kind, just tons of alien films, but he's also renowned for his work in the Giallo scene, making films with figures such as Dario Argento. His work is vast. He has gone from films that were of a sort of indie horror sense in his home country of Italy to blockbuster films over the years. Now we've got a lesser known name, but one that's incredibly important to the David Lynch canon, Frank Silva. He would do some production work and set work on not just this film, Dune, but Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks, going on to play a very important role in Twin Peaks. Those who know. Now we've got some more important crew in the form of our composers. We've got kind of an odd choice with the rock band Toto. I've always believed that the choice of having Toto there to compose the film was because of David Lynch's long-withstanding love for the Wizard of Oz, hearing their name and probably thinking, oh, it's like that dog. Something like that. We've also got Brian Eno, legendary ambient musician of many a trade, but he does provide one of his signature ambient tracks for what is known as the Prophecy theme, appearing a couple times within 1984 Dune. But all of those people come together and make the film itself. A film that was highly anticipated. You can find a film called Destination Dune, more of a short film, more of a trailer in the description. There was so much hype for this. There was so much love poured into this. A lot of fun had on the set. But it was basically all for naught. The film did not make back its budget. The film did, horribly critically, raising just 1-star rating by Siskel and Ebert. So many critics tore this film apart. It was not well liked by many a critic in its time. Of course, it would go on to have more of a cult following over the years, but this was not so much the case. It would even go on to sort of tank Dino De Laurentiis' production company, having Blue Velvet be the last of its films. But this is coming about because all of the work of filming in Mexico, doing all that it took to make this film come to life, it just ultimately didn't pan out. And that is unfortunate because there is so much to love as a Lynch fan. We've got a lot of oddities having to do with animals. In this here scene, we've got a sort of an array of soldiers going into battle. Gurney Halleck in the front of them with the Atreides house dog, which is a pug, which is a Lynch exclusive. This, of course, was not in the book whatsoever. It is never mentioned that they have a dog. But not only that, they decide to have a space pug that's somehow endured 8,000 years of being a breed until this very point. Congrats on pugs for existing in the Dune universe at this point. We've also got this contraption with this smooth cat and this rat that a character known as Thufir Hawat is supposed to milk so that he may find an antidote to cure a poison that he has in his body. That is from a little bit of truth from the book itself, where Thufir Hawat has to eat food provided to him to cure his poison. But it was not a cat that he had to milk. That is purely a Lynch creation. We can see some of that vision coming through in this crude drawing from Lynch himself. Really excellent stuff. More Lynch expertise, let's just say uniqueness, is this here shot of the villain Baron Harkonnen drenched in this black goo. This is also so signature. It would go on to sort of reappear within the newer adaptations by Denis Villeneuve, this sort of black goo that heals the Baron. But it is not necessarily explained. It just sort of happens, as do a lot of things within the Baron's domain, the Harkonnen domain. It seems to be one of the most favored part of the films by Lynch. I saw a couple images of this here cat in toy form carried by Feyd Rautha, the Baron's nephew. I don't know what kid was a fan of those so much that they would go out and say, I want this, after seeing Dune 1984 of all things. But good on whatever kid was like that, because that film, it would underperform, but man, did they want it to succeed. I've got some evidence in the form of these here trading cards. Yes, poor Raban. He's been a bad, bad boy. A couple others. We've got Paul and a sticker on the back of Feyd, ready to fight. You can also read there is 132 of these cards. Yes, 132 collectible trading cards, and I've got a couple right here with me. There was so much that went into this. There was even a Marvel comic that would come out concurrently, but it just didn't work. Despite being friends with Frank Herbert, despite having an authorized script, and despite even getting some sort of sign and signature of approval, even when the film was out, this film did not do well. It did not bode well for Lynch's career. This scene of him on set is kind of darkly ironic with those flames and corpses behind him all over the Sardaukar. This film did not reach its potential because Lynch did not get to make the film he wanted to. He was selling out, and he died the death, as he will go on to tell you in many an interview. It's a story that can be told many a time through many a recounting, but I've got a clip that so succinctly wraps it up in this next and final slide. It's from a 2006 interview, but this is one of the most iconic clips. It's what I will leave you with as I say farewell to you all, and thank you once again for sticking through another lesson of David Lynch 1001. I know it's been a much shorter one, but it's needed to happen, and it's been a little bit of delay, which I apologize for. It's not the greatest of films. It's not the greatest of things to talk about. I feel like much better people have talked about it much better. Again, check out David Lynch and Dune, the Forgotten Reel video down in the description. Otherwise, watch this clip, and I'll see you all on the next lesson. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.
Can I ask you why you consider Dune a disappointment?
Dune, I didn't have Final Cut on. And it's the only film I've made that I didn't have. I didn't technically have Final Cut on The Elephant Man, but Mel Brooks gave it to me. And on Dune, I started selling out even in the script phase, knowing I didn't have Final Cut. And I sold out. So it was a slow dying the death, and a terrible, terrible experience.
Do you regret making it?
Yes, except it just nailed this idea: never, ever do a film without Final Cut. And why would I have done it? I don't know how it happened. I trusted that it would work out, but it was very naive and the wrong move.
It's got a lot of fans.
There's some things about it, but overall, it was squeezed because in those days, the maximum length they figured I could have is 2 hours and 17 minutes, and that's what the film is. So they wouldn't lose a screening a day. And so it's, again, money talking and not for the film at all. And so it was like compacted, and it hurt it. It hurt it.
I mean, there's been talk for years about your version of it, which does not exist.
No, it doesn't exist. There is no other version. There's more stuff, but even that is putrefied.